to Primed for Battle. I'm Tim, your host, and today we're going to be painting a Tyranid Lictor in the Hive Fleet Pterodon scheme. If you haven't seen it already, I've got a video on my channel painting a Tyranid Termagant, and this is following that same scheme, just on a larger scale. Today we're going to start with a Wraithbone Spray Prime, and then we're going to use some Carroburg Crimson Contrast. Unfortunately, I lost the initial footage with some technical difficulties, so we're starting partway into the Carroburg Crimson Contrast painting here, but I don't think it affects things too much. Want to make sure that you're getting all of the skin areas. Don't worry too much if you're getting any on any of the armor plating or the claws, etc. We can go back and clean that up afterwards with some Wraithbone. Just make sure that you're getting in all the crevices and things where you can, and again, don't stress too much if you miss some areas. We can go back and get that later. Ultimately, you just don't want it to pool too much on any of the flat surfaces. Next, we're just going to go back through and, with the Wraithbone base paint, cover up any areas that we've gone over accidentally with the Carroburg Crimson, and just tidy up the edges, any additional panels. In retrospect, with this kit, I'd probably leave the head off, just to make access to the neck a little bit easier, but it's easy enough to fix that up afterwards, just going back over with some Wraithbone. So next step, we're going to use some Pterodon Turquoise, and this is going to cover all of the armor panels. So that'll be the top of the head, like I've started with here, the shoulders, around the back, on the shins and thighs, on the tail, and on the very top of the claws, or mandibles, claws, mandibles, not sure. Again, it's easy enough to clean this up afterwards if you do go over slightly, but do try to be careful and just make it a little bit easier for yourself and not having to go back too much, but it's easy enough to fix. Now, it's important here, I like to try and make it pool to a degree, so I use a reasonable amount on the brush, not too heavy, but you like to make it pool a bit and give you that shadowy effect in the recesses and some of the cracks and crevices that the model is sculpted in. You can see here that I'm just applying a little bit extra of the turquoise onto some of those panels just to add to that pooling. If you do put too much on, you can always soak some of it up with a clean brush. Don't mind the flying around. Just take your time, get a nice application of it, and once it's set, try not to go back and touch it. You can often smudge contrast paints a bit if you're touching them too much as they're drying. So in the next step here, we're using some Magma Droth Flame contrast, which is a nice orange contrast paint. It's a single pigment contrast, which essentially means it's going to give you a nice even coloring rather than a shade in the recess style effect that the initial Wave 1 launch of contrast paints had. But for what we're wanting with this, we can go back and apply that shading later. I'm just specifically looking for the bright orange colouring here. We're going to use that on the inside of the mandibles, this sort of ridged bony area, and then we're also going to apply that over all of the claws and talons, flesh hooks I think they are, on the various parts of the lictor as well. I think the orange just gives it a nice standout colour with the sort of fleshy pink and the green. It's a nice colourful contrast sort of scheme, which I'm quite fond of. As always, do try to be neat where you can, but we can go back and clean this up. Some of the later step will clean up a little bit of some of the overspill on the edges, so don't stress too much about individually picking it up, as we'll go back over the skin with some highlights shortly, so that will fix up some of that orange overspill. If you've got any thoughts on what you'd like to see me paint, please feel free to leave a comment down below. I'm always interested in new projects. I think next I'm potentially going to look at painting a Seraphon spawn of Chotek, or Salamander for the old school Lizardmen players, and also considering something in the Cities of Sigmar range coming soon, so watch out for those. That orange has come along nicely, nice vibrant colour, and essentially done on that colour for now. So next I'm just going back in with some Caribou Crimson again, just to clean up any of the areas that I missed with the crimson in the first pass, and that I sort of found as I went through and did the orange talons and hooks and stuff. So just fix things up as you go. There's no shame in fixing problems or finding them as you go. Everyone makes them. So with that done, we're now going to go back and, as I'd mentioned before, we're going to use some Rakarth flesh just to do some highlighting on the bony ridges and raised areas of the flesh, and bring a little bit of interesting texture to that skin and bony areas. And so we're looking at the bones on the elbows, the raised areas on the arms. You'll also already have them sort of lighter after doing the Caribou Crimson. Sort of naturally the raised areas won't have picked the Caribou up as much. But also you're looking at around the elbows, as you can see here, around the edges of the mandibles, which will clean up a bit of the orange overspill on the on those edges. The rib cage, some of the bony areas, it all sort of really stands out. Those tentacles on the face, tentacles, would you call them? The sides of the heads, the knuckles, things like that. Just pick those out. Don't have to be too neat. I've been, as you can see, I've been pretty rough. They are a organic being after all. It doesn't really matter too much how tidy this is. It just adds a bit of surface texture. A little bit of a break in the video there. It's an editing fault. Oops. I'm on my third video editing program now. I've gone through trialing a few different ones to see what works and what I like. But with that comes a challenge of learning a new program each time. So bear with me. I'm still feeling this out on how I want to do this and how I want my workflow to go and such as with the video editing. So I'm just going back here, some of the ridges of the tail, some of the edges there, just to bring out again some of that surface texture. A little bit around the thighs there and some of those bigger, flatter areas. I wouldn't worry too much about making it areas that are being hit by the light. It's more sort of where the bone or cartilage or whatever underneath is pressing tension against the skin and causing it to be a bit lighter. So once you've done that, we're going to move on to the next step. And we're doing some Lucian purple contrast and all these little flesh vents, I want to call them maybe. Yeah, we'll go with vents. There's a few of those on the legs and arms. So just go around and find those. I find the Lucian purple sort of complements the pink well, but stands out different enough that again it adds a little bit of visual interest to the model without drawing too much attention to itself. There's some little tiny ones on the back of the hands as well. Don't forget to miss to get those. Right, now that we're done with that one, we're going to move on to Fugen Orange. And this is a shade, and we're just going to do this over the entirety of the orange. Now on the Termagant video, you may note that on that video I did the Fugen Orange after doing the Lugganath Orange highlights, which in retrospect I should have done with this one. It was purely a error on my behalf. I've done them in the wrong order, so don't mind me. Yeah, this just adds a little bit of shading back into that orange that we don't get from using the single pigment contrast paint. Just make sure you're getting all of those orange flesh hooks and claws and talons, etc. And then once that's finished, we're going to use a probably 75% contrast medium to 25% Volupus pink, just to get the strength of that pink down. It is a very vibrant pink, and I think with these kinds of effects we want to less is more, and we can always come back and do additional coats. So what I'm doing here is just using that Volupus pink mix just to tint the end of those face tentacles in a pinkish sort of hue, and also with the fleshy areas at the back of the mandibles there. Tentacles, talons. And again, just leave it for a bit and come back with additional coats if you need to. I've done sort of progressively lower on the face tentacles, just to make it a bit more pink at the bottom, and sort of give it a natural sort of fade and progression up that tentacle, but you know, do it to your taste, but I think the effect comes out quite nicely. It gives it a sort of pinky, inflamed, reddish look that I find quite enjoyable on these models. Also do just a little bit in around the edges of the face there and stuff as well, just to add to the effect. And I think it looks quite nice. Next, I'm coming back with that Lugganath orange to do some highlights on the edges and tips of the claws, and flesh hooks and the talons, etc. And then also the bony ridges on the top talons. I really need to sort of come up with something consistent for what we're going to call these, but the mandible talons, we'll go with that for now. So just trying to keep that kind of thin. Some of it's a little bit thicker than others, but just getting a nice little edge highlight on some of these claws just adds a nice little look to it. And then obviously with the ridges on the mandible talons, I'll just go through and individually call out those various lines. Take your time. Don't worry if it's not super neat. It can be fixed up, or you can leave it a little bit messy. It doesn't matter too much. Some of mine's not super tidy, but it still pulls off a nice effect. So just go through and put that all in. This gives us a nice sort of variation and highlight to that orange. It's coming along pretty well now. The mini's sort of really getting some character to it now. And there's the orange highlights. Not too bad, if I say so myself. So next we're going to start, actually I've just come back here and done some Luxian purple in the inside of the legs there. I decided that some of the joints would benefit from the same visual effect as the vents on the arm, so I've gone back here and done the inside of the thighs there, and then also the joints in the back of the knees and around the elbows and wrists, etc. just to continue that effect on the vents and separate the different areas of the Lictor's body. But you know, just see how you feel. You might enjoy it as it is. Just making sure I haven't missed any parts, but no, I think overall that that'll about do it for the Luxian purple. So now I'm going to come in and just quickly paint the eyes in with Corax white, so that we can come back later and fill those in with yellow. So just get a nice point on your brush, just take it nice and slow and fill that that eye in. It helps to stable your arms on a desk or arms on your chair. That gives you an anchor point, which helps keeps your hands steadier and makes painting smaller things easier. Luckily the eyes on the Lictor are reasonably large in comparison to a lot of other model eyes, so it's a little bit easier to get in there. And then the next step, we're going to start on this little tactical ruin that the Lictor is standing on with some Mechanicus Standard Grey. So we're going over the entirety of the ruin other than the growth, the Tyranid growth on there. So even the areas that we're going to come back over with metal a bit later, the Mechanicus Standard Grey will just serve as a bit of base for that metallic paint that we're going to use. So fill in the grate there on there, and just all of that ruin. Do multiple coats if you need to. Don't stress too much about getting any on the growth. Try to avoid getting it on the Tyranid itself, but again, that can be fixed up. So just getting in around the edges of the growth here, and then we'll come back and clean up some of that that growth area on the model with some wraithbone. So quickly, while that's drying, we're just going to use some Imperial Fist contrast to do the eyes, to give them a nice yellow glow. Imperial Fist contrast is another one of the single pigment contrast paints, so it gives you a nice consistent vibrant yellow color, which works well for what I'm doing with my Tyranid eyes. However, if you prefer, you can come back and add some sort of lens flare. I'm not a fan of adding irises and things to the Tyranids. I prefer them to have sort of just a one color eye. It's a little bit more intimidating in my mind. But then, as I mentioned, we're going to come back over with some wraithbone and just clean up some of that slimy growth area from that little spore thing that's on the edge of the base here. And then once that's done, we'll come back through with some Caribou Crimson again, just on the inside of that area, just to keep it consistent with the rest of the model. And again, you want to make sure that this is pooling a bit to get you the shading effect that you're after, but don't put too much on. You can always draw a bit off with a clean brush if you overdo it a bit. And with that done, we're going to use some lead belcher on the metallic areas of that ruin. So this is the edging around the bottom, and then also the grate, whatever it is, in the center of the circle area there, which is on both sides. So just get that all the way around, nice consistent coat. And you can see there, nice shiny metallic lead belcher. And then while that dries, we'll just go through with some Tyranid turquoise contrast again, just on the shell of that little spore growth on the edge of the base. Trying not to go over the caribou crimson where possible. Right, now what we're going to do is use some Administratum Grey layer paint, and we're going to do a bit of a wet dry brush slash stipple sort of effect. So you probably want to use a older brush that you're not particularly fond of. You can see I'm just sort of roughly going around there, sort of catching the edges with the side of the brush as a sort of edge highlight dry brush effect. And then stippling a bit on some of the flatter panels, just to give you a bit of different surface texture prior to coming back in the later step with some Nuln Oil. So this just gives you a bit of surface variation on that concrete, a bit of stress and damage. Calls out some of the areas there that have been sculpted and is broken. So feel free to be a bit rough with this step, and yeah, just dab your brush around and drag it over some of the ridges and raised areas. And that's all done. Looking quite nice, but one more step to do on the tactical ruin. And we're going to use some Nuln Oil, one of the MVP paints, if I do say so. You want to use this reasonably heavy and just go over the entirety of that tactical rock other than the growth. So all of the metallic areas and the concrete areas, make sure you get enough in the steel grates just to fill in the gaps, and that'll just really bring in some definition and some contrast to that tactical ruin and really sort of make it pop. You can sort of see there it's a little bit wet still, but it really just sort of brings out the different colors and the stress that it's been under, in my mind, and looks quite good and dirty and worn. Right, and we're almost done. Final step, we're going to come back over the hooves with some Black Templar. This is one of the original contrast range colors, the black from that range, and it's a slightly transparent black. So the thing I like about it is I can use it over the Tyranid turquoise here, and it'll just show a hint of that turquoise color through the black, which is sort of the reason why I used it for the feet. It sort of gives you a kind of edge highlight on a black, which works well. And after doing the basing, there's my finished Tyranid Lictor in High Fleet Pterodon. So thanks for watching, thanks for joining me. Feel free to drop some comments below, some feedback. What did you like? What don't you like? How would you like to see my videos sort of work in the future? Any particular projects that you'd like me to see me do or tackle, I'd be happy to consider. And as always, if you could like the video, subscribe, check me out on Instagram, now on TikTok. Follow me on all those places if you can, if you choose to. And otherwise, thanks for joining me. It's been a pleasure, and I'll see you all next time.